Hello and welcome to another installment of Live with Normal. My name is Morgan Fox, Normal's political director, coming to you from Washington, D.C., and here with a federal policy update. I think today's is probably going to be pretty short because Congress has been in recess for the last month, so not much has been happening, but I can give you a quick rundown of things that we're watching and where they currently stand. Start off with the medical marijuana research bill that was passed unanimously in the Senate. Has now been sent back to the Senate after passing, or after the House passed a much better version that included access to researchers for dispensaries and other state legal cannabis products that people are actually using. Um, Unfortunately, in conference committee, the House sent back a compromise bill that removed that language and is very similar to the bill that the Senate passed unanimously. We are expecting the Senate to sign that bill and send it to the president soon after returning from recess this month. Um, while this bill is definitely a step in the right direction, I think it's more important as a symbolic victory in that if it's signed by President Biden, it will be the first piece of standalone policy reform legislation that we've seen in the cannabis space, which would be a really huge hurdle. And as I've always said, once you get lawmakers comfortable voting for incremental reforms such as this, it makes the next one that much easier to vote yes on. So we're really looking forward to seeing the Senate move this bill through to the president's desk and hopefully get it signed as quickly as possible. Next up, the National Defense Authorization Act. The House version that was passed a couple months ago includes a number of cannabis policy reform provisions, including the safe banking language. Um, Language that would allow veterans to be able to more easily access medical cannabis and provide additional protections to those that are doing so, as well as allowing VA doctors to recommend cannabis to veterans in states where that's legal. It prevents federal employment discrimination against veterans for past or current cannabis use. And it requests that the VA not deny housing loans to veterans who work in the state legal cannabis industry, although this provision is non binding. There are also several research provisions as well that would be very useful. Now, the Senate Armed Services Committee is expected to release its version of this package before the end of the month. So please go to normal.org/act to find out how you can contact your senators and urge them to keep the House's cannabis-related provisions in their version of the NDAA. It's really important that we show members of the Senate that we're willing to get cannabis-related language attached to any and every bill that is going to come across their desks, and that we really need to make these changes happen now, not only for the safety of national security, but for the health and benefit of our veteran population. Um, Next up, I know that everybody is kind of interested to hear about what's happening with the Cannabis Administration and Opportunity Act. Um, the bill is doing a great job at fostering conversations in Congress about all sorts of cannabis policy reforms. Um, well, while it is very unlikely to come up for a vote in the current session, and if it did, it's very unlikely that it would pass. It's really helping to move the conversation around legalization further down the road and open up new avenues for potential compromise. Um, while this is going on, we're actually seeing negotiations accelerating to pass a package of incremental provisions, which could include a number of things that have been found in other bills, including safe banking, possibly with stronger anti-discrimination protections than exist in the standalone bill, veterans access and protections, federal funding for state-level efforts to expunge minor cannabis-related criminal records, access to funds and resources available through the Small Business Administration for licensed small cannabis businesses, and Second Amendment protections for registered medical cannabis patients. How much of that ends up in final negotiations, I think remains to be seen, but we're clearly trying to get as much as we can involved in this process so that we can get a little bit closer to what we would call modern cannabis policy reforms in this country. And last but not least, there has been a lot of chatter recently about whether or not the president might be considering making good on some of his campaign promises when it comes to marijuana, considering the recent follow through on forgiving student loans. Unfortunately, we haven't had any confirmation that that is under consideration at this time. And when asked about it, most administration officials have ducked it. But rest assured, NORML is going to continue knocking on those doors and trying to get the president to follow through on those campaign promises, ideally before the midterm elections, because it can only help his party. And there's absolutely no reason not to do what's in the executive's power when it comes to undoing some of the harms caused by the war on drugs. That's about it. We'll be back next week with another update from Jax about the great progress that we're seeing at the state level and the exciting ballot initiatives that we're going to see in a handful of states coming up in the November elections. So please make sure to tune in at the same time next week. And as always, please go to norml.org to learn the latest in cannabis policy and science news and learn how you can help us get closer to rational cannabis policy reform. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend.